Hello again. I am back for the first time in over a week. So sorry about that. I had some personal stuff going on at the beginning of the week. And then yesterday I was in Springfield, Missouri watching Whose Live Is It Anyways. It's a live adaptation of the show Whose Line Is It Anyways. It was super funny. If you guys haven't seen that show, I'd definitely recommend it. Awesome. I loved going to see it live. All the guys were super funny. It's all improv. It's all just whatever the crowd tells them to do, they'll do, for the most part. I think they had a little bit of planned stuff, but it was super fun. They made fun of this old couple the whole show, pretty much. Like, they brought him up for one of the first skits, and then they just made fun of him for the rest of the show. It was really funny. You know, like, Betty, Corey, and Galen. And Galen and Corey were married, but according to the people running the show, you know, the comedy show, Corey and Betty were having a side thing. It was really funny. I'll get back to college football, what you guys actually want to listen to. We had a great week last week of college football. Are you kidding me? I have a brand new top 25 for me personally, not the AP top 25, but my top 25. At the start, I have Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2. None of them are changing, even though they both looked a little off. Texas jumps Florida State after Florida State really struggles against Boston College. Penn State stays at 5. Washington up 3. Ohio State down 1, USC down 1, Notre Dame up 3, LSU up 1, Alabama down 1, so they flip-flopped. Utah, Oregon both staying the same at 12 and 13. Oklahoma up 4 to 14, Oregon State staying at 15. 16 is North Carolina, 17 Ole Miss is up 2 spots, Iowa is also up 2 spots to 18, Tulane is up 2 spots to 19, Colorado up 2 spots to 20. Tennessee drops 13 spots to 21. Duke is up 1 spot to 22. Clemson up 1 spot, and Miami all up 1 spot due to K-State dropping out. In my 25th best team, I bet you think there's got to be 2 options, right? Mizzou or Florida. And you know, I'm from Missouri. I'm going Mizzou. Not just because I'm from Missouri. I legitimately think they're the better team. Luther Burden popped off against K-State. We'll get to that in a second, but I have a few reasons. I'm just going to rapid fire them off real quick. Texas was in danger of not taking advantage of Florida State playing about it against Boston College, but they rattled off 3 straight touchdowns to save it late, and they jumped up to number 3 overall over Florida State. Washington, they look like a legit national championship contender. Michael Penix is at least a top 3 quarterback, and he's probably number 2 to Caleb Williams. Notre Dame has looked really, really good. Haven't scored less than 41 points yet. We'll get to them later in the show. Obviously, we're going to preview the games for tomorrow for week 4 of the college football season. Oklahoma, they're beating teams by an average of 46.3 points. That's crazy. They are absolutely obliterating the teams that they're playing. Granted, they're not very good teams, but that's exactly what you want to do against not very good teams. Colorado moves up solely because everyone else moved down. You know, Tennessee and K-State, they both moved down. Colorado didn't play that good at all against Colorado State. They cannot play like that in Pac-12 play. Tennessee looked terrible. Joe Milton needs to find his accuracy if they want to compete in the SEC. Missouri, like I just said a bit ago, Luther Burden, he's a legit playmaker. Get him the ball in open space, and he'll at least make 2 or 3 men miss. K-State, they did not look like the Big 12 champion team that they think that they are. They need to have a better quarterback if they want to compete against Oklahoma and Texas. Now, moving on, because I did not have an episode earlier this week, I'm still going to review all the games from last week. I'm not talking about the same games that I did talk about last week just because a few things happened, and like I didn't talk about the Colorado State game because I didn't think it'd be close. Well, I was sure wrong. We'll get to that in just a second. To start, we're going LSU and Mississippi State, just like I did last week. It went real differently than I thought it would. Right. I thought it'd be close. I thought Mississippi State was a better team than what they showed on Saturday. LSU blew them out, 41-15. Jaden Daniels threw for 361 yards and 2 touchdowns and only 4 incompletions on the day. Daniels also rushed for 64 yards and added 2 more touchdowns on the ground. LSU had 530 total yards of offense compared to Mississippi's 201. Mississippi State only had 107 passing yards for a team that averaged 311 passing yards per game last year. Mississippi State was only able to rush for 97 yards on the ground, and an atrocious game for that offense. Just all around terrible for Mississippi State. Their coach, Zach Arnett, needs to figure it out, right? They had such a pass-heavy offense last year, and he's trying to switch them into a more ground-and-pound team, and it's just not working. They don't have the guys for that. They have the guys that can throw the ball 50 times a game and pull one out, win a game like 43-38. They're not going to win a game 13-6 like they're Iowa. That's what Zach Arnett's trying to do, and it's just not going to work. They don't have good enough players for that. It's not that they don't have good enough players, it's that they don't have the players that fit that kind of football. Now, I've added another section onto these review games. It's called Outlook. Where do I think the teams will go from here, or where does this game put the teams after this game? LSU looked like a team that can compete for the SEC championship. They did not look like the same team 2 weeks ago. Jaden Daniels needs to continue to play like that if they want to turn their season around. He played lights out. If he can do that against a pretty good defense in Mississippi State, the sky's the limit for this LSU team. Now, they only have one loss to a really good Florida State team. Their season is most certainly not over just because of that loss. They have plenty of opportunities going forward to win games. They're going to play Alabama at some point. They're probably going to have to face Georgia in the SEC championship if they make it that far. Should be really interesting for LSU and how they go the rest of the season. Now, moving on to Georgia and South Carolina. What happened in this game? I'll tell you. It was a Mizzou 2.0 for Georgia, right? Remember last year, Georgia was at Mizzou. They were down 2 scores at halftime. They looked terrible. Did not look like a team that could compete for a national championship. I drove past that stadium on the way home from a band competition. Yeah, that's right, a band competition. But I drove past the stadium as it was happening, and wow, the environment was crazy. Through the roof, everyone was losing their minds during that game, and it was awesome. I turned it on my phone real quick, and Georgia comes right back and wins that fast. They did the same thing in this game. Georgia looked terrible in that first half. Questionable defensive calls, no pressure from the D-line. Offensive line couldn't get anything going. Georgia finished with 4 sacks, but only one of them was in the first half. They gave up 2 sacks on one half and was not winning in the trenches at all. Well, the second half was a completely different story. 3 sacks, and it felt like Spencer Rattler was running all over the place. The O-line didn't give up a single sack in the last half as Georgia took over every aspect of the game. Meanwhile, for South Carolina, Spencer Rattler played great for one half but was under constant duress the second. He finished with 256 yards and a touchdown while adding 2 picks on the final 2 drives of South Carolina's day. South Carolina could never get anything going on the ground. Spencer Rattler led the team in rushing yards with 35, and the team finished with just 52 rushing yards. Terrible. That second half was terrible. Georgia down 14-3 at half, and they come out and score 2 touchdowns on their first 2 drives of the second half, completely killing all hope that the Gamecocks ever had. Now, the outlook. This game, like I just said, looked a ton like the Mizzou game last year. They were down 2 scores at half, looking like a team that maybe could win the SEC. Then they did the exact same thing they did last year. They looked like an elite team in the second half, right? This game doesn't affect my view on Georgia at all. This season, it won't change anything till I see a game that they don't dominate at some point and end up winning. What I mean by that is I need a game from Georgia where they don't dominate the game. In the second half, they dominated. Maybe it could have been the fourth quarter, they dominated. It could have been the second quarter, they dominated and then coasted the rest. But I want to see a game where Georgia doesn't dominate the game. If they can win a game against, maybe it's Tennessee down the line, and they win the game 24-21, or maybe 28-21, they're not really dominating at any point, but they're clearly the better team, then my opinion on them might change. But for now, they're going to three-peat. I didn't pick them to three-peat at the beginning of the year, but Michigan did not look good this week. J.J. McCarthy threw 3 picks against Bowling Green. That's not okay. He played so good the first 2 games. He threw almost more touchdowns than he did have incompletions. But 3 picks against Bowling Green, that's not going to get the job done. Not at all. That's why I think Georgia right now is probably easily the favorite to three-peat, which is kind of a bummer because I don't like seeing three-peats, but if they deserve it, they deserve it. Georgia is still a national championship contender. Don't get it twisted. They're still the best team in the country. Now, Washington at Michigan State. Why would I talk about this? It was a blowout. Well, it was a big game, especially for Washington. They did so good. Michael Penix did more than just torch them like I said he would last week. He put them on the grill, cooked them well done, flipped them over, and did it again. 473 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 picks. Even the run game got going with Tybo Rogers running for 74 yards and Dylan Johnson running for 71, ending up with 177 rushing yards as a team. Altogether, the Huskies finished with 713 total yards of offense in a dominant 41-7 win. Wow. Did you hear those stats? I'm going to say it again. 713 total yards of offense. 473 passing yards. Are you crazy? What? That's insane. That's just for Michael Penix that had 473 yards. Obviously, he got pulled at the end because they were up 41-7. For Michigan State, not really much to say. I mean, you don't expect much going into the first game without your head coach after he kind of betrays you. Mel Tucker, I'm not going to get too deep into it. But if what has been said is what happened, that's not good. I think you all know what I'm talking about. You don't feel great if that's who you've been playing for. You feel betrayed, you feel stabbed in the back, and I can't really blame him for going out there and just like, okay, whatever, I don't care about this. I don't really blame him, but it was very, very impressive from Michael Penix to take advantage of that. Outlook. Washington is a legit playoff contender. If Penix continues to play the way that he is, he'll win the Heisman on the way to a national championship game. He looked like a top 2 quarterback behind Caleb Williams, like I said earlier when I was talking about the top 25, and the sky is the limit for how high he can elevate his game. He's got really good receivers and running backs around him and a defense that can hold teams to 200 yards. They can walk through the Pac-12. Washington is a college football playoff contender. Let's get to a huge upset, probably the biggest upset of the weekend, which had 2 big ones. The other one obviously being Mizzou and K-State. Florida upsets number 11 Tennessee and handedly. They beat them 29-16. Joe Milton threw for 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. He went 20 for 34 through the air. I think that really hides his inaccuracy problems. Milton seemed to have all game. I was very wrong about the run game. Just 100 yards on the ground while leading rusher Jalen Wright had just 63 yards. Just a bad day overall for an offense we thought would be elite. As for Florida, a great day for the defense, allowing just 387 yards. Graham Mertz played good enough, and he threw for 166 yards and a touchdown. But most importantly, 0 picks. That allowed Travis Etienne's little brother, he plays at Florida, obviously. He ran for 172 yards with a touchdown, including a long run of 62 yards. A dominant day on the ground for the Florida Gators. Now, the outlook for this game. Is there any way Tennessee can make the playoff? They have one loss, only one loss, but they still have to play at Alabama, and they also have to play at Georgia. Not at Georgia, but they have to play Georgia. Not to mention the difficulty of a normal SEC schedule. They could drop any game at any time. Hard to see a way Tennessee is in playoff conversation at the end of the year. For Florida, they looked really, really good. They're ranked in the AP top 25. Not my top 25, but they are ranked right now. They have a number 25 next to their name. They finally have some hope for this program that has been dying for any sign of life since about 2012. Whether they end up being good this year or not, they at least can see that Billy Napier can win a big game and beat a good team. So, good for Florida, good for Billy Napier to get that big win, and at least, like I just said, if they suck this year, which they might, they can do terrible the rest of the season, but at least they have a good win. I think that'll buy Billy Napier some time. I think that'll buy him enough time, if he can win enough games this year, to, get more extensions. Have more time to build his team his way and really rebuild that Florida team. Now, Colorado State at Colorado. What a game. Shedeur Sanders played like another great quarterback. He went 38 for 47 with 348 yards and 4 touchdowns with just 1 interception. Really stepped it up on that 98-yard touchdown drive to tie the game on a 45-yard touchdown pass, but that's the problem. Colorado, the number 18 team in the country, was losing with 37 seconds left to Colorado State. Why? Because they didn't have a ground game. No defense. Leadback Dylan Edwards had just 57 yards. Despite that, he averaged 5.7 yards per carry. So why didn't they run the ball more? If he averaged 5.7 yards per carry, why didn't they just run the ball? Well, they were losing the whole game. They were down the entire third and fourth quarter until the end, so they couldn't ever run the ball. They were too busy trying to throw it, save some time so they could have more chances. And it just never happened. They didn't score until a 98-yard drive. That was really impressive. The defense was not good at all. They gave up 499 yards to Colorado State and 397 passing yards to Colorado State. Granted, they did force 3 interceptions. They just weren't good enough anywhere else. They forced good turnovers. That was it. But they did pull out a win 43-35, and it was the perfect way to end a great day of college football. Outlook. Who knows? This Colorado team is something that we've never seen before. I don't know what to say about them anymore because some days they're really good, some days they're really bad, some days they're inexperienced and lack of depth, some days they have their stars shining brighter than the Northern Star. They're so off and on. I don't know what to say about them. I don't really have an outlook for them because I don't know. They beat TCU, handedly took care of Nebraska, but they narrowly escaped Colorado State. Fortunately, they have Oregon tomorrow, so we will find out just how good they are. Now, moving on to my game of the week for week 3 of the college football season, K-State at Mizzou. Well, that was such a fun game to watch. The best thing about it, I picked it to be my game of the week, and it could not have gone any better. A game-winning 61-yarder from the thicker kicker, Harrison Mevis. Brady Cook proved he can play at a high level, going 23 for 35 and 356 yards. 2 touchdowns on a bad ankle. Will Howard for K-State needs to play better if they want to bounce back. 270 yards and 3 touchdowns, but a pick and a handful of missed throws cost K-State this game. But what won the game? What was the difference maker? The breakout of Luther Burden III. Class of 2022 top 5 recruit at a breakout game. 11 targets, 7 catches, 114 yards, and 2 touchdowns, including a 47-yard bomb from Brady Cook. If Luther Burden can play like this, Mizzou can go to very high places. Outlook. Mizzou should be ranked. I have them number 25 for a reason. They should be ranked. They're not in the AP top 25, but they should be. They are a better team than Florida. They're a better team than most people think. Brady Cook is questionable this weekend, but I think after last week, he's good enough QB to take them to very high places. For K-State, they found out that they have a lot of holes to fill from the reigning Big 12 championship team. Run game is lackluster at best, and the quarterback just isn't that good. Look for Avery Johnson to get a few more snaps. The 4-star freshman out of Nebraska. Going to have actually, no, he's from Wichita. Yeah, he wasn't from Nebraska. He's from Wichita. They're going to have a lot to turn around if they want to win the Big 12. I don't see a way that they do. I just don't. I think it's down to Oklahoma and Texas. Really, Texas. I'd bet per a lot of money that it's going to be Texas to win the Big 12. If not, then Texas is Texas. We'll move on. We're going to preview Week 4, one of the best weeks of college football in a long time. They have the most ranked versus ranked matchups since 2005. There is 6 ranked versus ranked games, and I have 7 games we're going to talk about. So pretty much, you already know what I'm talking about. It's the 6 ranked games, plus Florida State and Clemson. Now, we're going to start it off. Number 19, Colorado, at number 10, Oregon. Preview. This will be the first true test for the Colorado team. If they can somehow walk into Eugene and pull out a win, they will officially be a contender for 2023. Right now, I'd put them in the good team, quote-unquote, category. Still below the great teams, and they're certainly not elite, but they're a good team, which is way better than I thought that they would be, way better than what a lot of people thought they would be. I just don't see a way the Buffs come out of there with a win. Oregon is a great, borderline elite team. Bo Nix is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and they have a damn near close enough defense that could be really, really good. Oregon will slow down the pass enough to force them to run. And if Colorado can run the ball, their defense still isn't good enough to stop Oregon's high-powered offense. My pick, Oregon. I know I just said it. I think they're going to win by a lot. You guys know I'm not a fan of Deion. I'm not a huge fan. I like him. He's not terrible. I think he's good for the sport. He's bringing a lot of eyeballs on the sport. But I've picked them to lose quite a bit already. And I've been wrong quite a bit already. If I'm wrong again, sue me. They have not played a team like Oregon. An impotent Nebraska offense and a TCU team that lost nearly everyone, and then a Colorado State team who they almost lost to. So that has not prepared for them for a rowdy Autzen Stadium that is going to be very hostile on Saturday. Moving on to one of the best games of the week. Very, very underrated. Number 4, Florida State at Clemson. Okay. Clemson. They have one loss already to Duke. They're on the verge of elimination from the playoff. A win would vault them back into contention. Florida State, well, a huge win over LSU to start the season. And then almost a huge disappointment against Boston College. Biggest matchup in this game is easily Cade Klubnik and the Clemson receivers against the secondary. Cade Klubnik was flat out not good enough against Duke. But since then, he's thrown for 450 yards with 7 touchdowns and 1 pick. Can he keep that going into a game against a Florida State secondary that looked a little suspect against Boston College? I think it's possible. Florida State gave up 305 passing yards to Boston College. That's not a stat you want to see from the national championship contenders. My pick, Clemson. I am picking Clemson to win this game. This may surprise a lot of people, so I'll give you a second to calm down. Are we good? Are we good? You're not freaking out at me anymore? Okay. Look, Cade Klubnik looked good at times last year. He's a former 5-star recruit. He has the talent. The receivers, I think, will need to step up, but I think they will. This team knows the expectation whenever you commit to Clemson, especially when these guys committed to Clemson. They were still high up there. It is to compete and win national championships. They know that 2 losses before the calendar hits October is unacceptable. It's the complete opposite of what is expected for a Clemson football team. I picked Clemson to lose to Duke before the season started. If you go back and watch my predictions episode for the entire season, I have them losing to Duke. But I also had them winning this game. And I think they do. I'm going to stick with my gut. I think Clemson is a lot better than what you think. I think they've fixed a lot of their issues since that week 1 loss. And I think Clemson pulls it out. And I don't think Florida State can win in Death Valley. I don't think I've ever seen it. I don't think they're going to. Another huge game that is very similar. Alabama is hosting number 15 Ole Miss. Alabama's ranked outside the top 10 in eons. Imagine telling yourself in January of 2018 that 5 years later, 5 years later, 5.5 years later, Clemson and Alabama would both have a loss in September to Duke and Texas. Personally, I would have laughed at you and never talked to you again, but here we are. Ole Miss at Alabama. Dynasty is on the line. Key matchup, Jalen Milroe versus Jackson Dart. 2 great quarterbacks. I talk a lot about quarterback play on this show, yes, but that matchup is very interesting. For the first time in a long, long time, Ole Miss has the better quarterback over Alabama. Jalen Milroe has not been good, clearly. He looked uncomfortable and unprepared against Texas. Jackson Dart, on the other hand, has been lights out. 852 yards, 7 touchdowns to just 1 pick through the first 3 games. One of them was against a Power 5 Georgia Tech, and another against the best Group of 5 team in the country in Tulane. So it's not like they're playing scrubs. So clearly, they have nothing to scoff at beating those teams. I'm very, very curious to see how Jackson Dart performs against the best defense he's seen all year and probably the best one he's going to see all year. My pick, I gotta go with Bama. In my 16 and a half years of watching college football and being alive, I've learned that you never, ever bet against that man, Nick Saban, and especially not when everyone else is. I think they have a really good defense. I think they'll figure out the O-line. I expect a much better game plan that feeds more into Jalen Milroe's strengths. I want more QB runs, easier reads in the pass game, and a whole lot more of RPOs. That way, the O-line is never pass blocking, which they're not very good at, and Jalen Milroe only has to read one player, probably a linebacker. I think Bama wins that game. That may surprise some people because I think Ole Miss does have the better team, but I think Alabama wins that game based off of coaching, based off of being at home. I just don't see a way Ole Miss wins. I take that back. I see a lot of ways that Ole Miss wins. I just don't see any of them coming true. Heading out west, UCLA at number 11, Utah. I should put the number 22 for UCLA's name. Put some respect on UCLA team. Cam Rising, he's back, I think. It's the second time I've said that on the podcast. But Utah needs him back in a huge way against UCLA. The most points Utah has scored this season is just 31 points against Weber State. They need Cam Rising back. On the other hand, true freshman Dante Moore for UCLA has been playing really, really well for the last few games. Through 3 games, he has 615 yards, 7 touchdowns, and just 1 pick. I think the key to UCLA pulling off the upset is seeing how good Dante Moore can be against one of the best defenses in the country. My pick, I'm going Utah. I like Dante Moore. I like him a lot. He's from Michigan. I'm a Michigan fan. I really wish we had him. Really wish we had an NIL program that could have got him. We don't, and he's off at UCLA. He was at Oregon for a few months, but finally signed with UCLA back in the winter. I think he's really good. He's going to be really, really good. He's going to end up as a very, very high draft pick. I just don't think he's quite there yet. He has not faced a defense like he has against Utah. This Utah team is one of the best defenses in the country. They haven't given up more than 13 points, and that was to Baylor. If Cam Rising plays, then he should be able to win this game for Utah, even if he doesn't play very well. Just because the defense is going to stop UCLA from scoring too much. They're going to take advantage of an inexperienced quarterback in Dante Moore. Staying out west in the Pac-2 championship, it's Oregon State at Washington State. The Pac-2 championship. I saw a lawsuit a couple weeks ago. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it sounds like Washington State and Oregon State are trying to sue the Pac-12 and take control of it. So I think it's possible that this game is a preview of the Pac-12 championship this fall. You could see Oregon State and Washington State crown themselves as Pac-12 champions, and boom, they're playing for a Pac-12 championship. Anyways, this is going to be a really good game. Both teams are really good this year and have had a great start to the year. Oregon State is 3-0, obviously, and Wazoo had a statement win over Wisconsin. The Cougars have been on fire to start the year. They haven't scored less than 31 points this season, and that was against Wisconsin. Cameron Ward has thrown for 986 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 0 picks. Has he played a defense like Oregon State's? No. But I think DJ, whatever his last name is going to have to put up one of the best performances of his career. My pick, I think DJ has really found himself after transferring to OSU. The playbook fits him a lot better. The defense is a lot more capable than the one he had in Clemson. I don't think Wazoo has the defense to stop the Beavers. They've given up 20 points every game, including one to North Colorado. Don't sleep on the Oregon State Beavers. Now moving on to my second to last game Iowa at Penn State, the first ranked Big Ten versus ranked Big Ten game of the year. We're going to get to see just how good this Penn State offense is. They have one of the best running backs in the country. Best running backs room, that is. Sorry. But Nick Singleton, he's a dog anyways. They're both really good. He's really good. He's one of the best in the country. But now we get to see them against one of the best defenses in the country. So far this season, Penn State has not scored less than 30 points, including 63 against Delaware. Drew Aller has 737 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 picks to start the year. But I promise you, he hasn't played a defense like this. The Iowa defense is averaging 12.3 points allowed per game, while Penn State's offense is averaging 43 points per game. Something has to give. My pick, Penn State. I think they will win, but I do expect Iowa to cover the 14.5 point spread. I don't think Penn State is going to score when they want to, but I think certainly they'll be able to outscore an offense that put up 24 against Utah State. If Caden McNamara, Eric All, and Caleb Brown can step up, then they have a shot to win. I just don't see many ways they come out of Happy Valley with a dub, especially in a wideout game. Now, there leaves one more ranked versus ranked game, and it is my game of the week. Ohio State Buckeyes at the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in South Bend, Indiana. You can hear Ohio State's fans just shaking their legs right now, getting more and more anxious and nervous as kickoff looms closer and closer. Let's take a second. Think about what will happen if Notre Dame pulls off this win. They certainly can, but let's get way out in front of ourselves for a second. Ryan Day will be put on the hot seat by his fans at the minimum. For the past 2 years, we've watched Ryan Day teams get out-physicaled by the likes of Oregon and Michigan twice, and they blew a 14-point fourth quarter lead against the eventual national champions Georgia Bulldogs last year. And now, to start the season, they look worse than they have in any of those 3 years. Do I think he deserves to be fired? No, nowhere close. He's one of the best head coaches in the game right now. He just hasn't won many big games. It took Jim Harbaugh 7 years to figure it out. All I'm saying is OSU fans need to be patient. They were spoiled with Urban Meyer for too long and no longer know how to act when they lose. Just take a deep breath, breathe, and be patient even if he loses this game. What chance does Notre Dame have to win this game? Well, frankly, it's a very, very good shot. I've listed off some really good numbers already from passing quarterbacks in this episode. I have one that tops them all. Sam Hartman, 1,061 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. Are you kidding me? That's insane. Through 4 games. He is averaging 265.25 yards per game and throwing 3.25 touchdowns per game. That's just too good. I remind you, they haven't scored less than 41 points, like I said at the beginning of the show. And one of the 4 games was a 45-point win against a really good North Carolina State defense. Notre Dame feels a lot like Texas did going into this, and whenever Texas played Alabama. Signs are pointing toward a very down year for Ohio State, just like Alabama. Notre Dame is trying to prove they can be elite again, just like Texas. Notre Dame has one of the best offenses in the country and one of the best offensive lines in the country. Does that sound familiar? Even what I think will be the biggest matchup in the game is the same as the Bama and Texas game. Notre Dame's D-line versus Ohio State's O-line. OSU had to replace both tackles over the offseason, but have looked decent so far against subpar opponents. On the flip side, Notre Dame only has 6 sacks, one of the worst in FBS, but they have 70 quarterback pressures this season already and the top-ranked passing efficiency defense in the country. I believe whoever is more physical at the line of scrimmage is going to win this football game. My pick. I just said a lot of good things about Notre Dame. I said some bad things about Ohio State, but I still think they're going to win. As much as I want Ohio State to lose. As you guys know, I'm a huge Michigan fan. I really hope Ohio State loses this game. I don't think they will. I think they will lose eventually. I think it's later in the season. All due respect to Notre Dame, but I just don't see them at the level of Penn State or Michigan quite yet. I'd love for them to prove me wrong, but Notre Dame never has. They always underdeliver, Ohio State has too much talent on the offensive side of the ball. I think Kyle McCord will do enough to win this game, even if he's not a top-tier quarterback like he could be. I think he does enough, gets his weapons to the football, gets them out in open space, and make plays. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Scoring from the 50. Kind of a longer one. One of the longest ones I've ever done, actually. We're at 35 minutes already, but I do want to thank you guys again so much for listening. I appreciate it a ton, and I will see you guys hopefully next Tuesday, as long as I don't have more stuff come up. But thank you guys so much for listening. I will see you then.